Good afternoon. Hello. My name is Katarzynę Peplińska. My name is Katarzynę Peplińska Pietrzak. I am Polish, but I will speak in English. This is quite challenging for me because when I was preparing myself, I realized that about inclusion and accessibility, I think in Polish, and it is also a bit kind of language, but I will do my best. I am accessibility manager, coordinator, choreographer and director in the field of inclusive art for especially young audiences. I'm also audio describer in theater and in dance field. My specialization is integrated poetic creative audio description and audio description for dance. For me, it is like choreography of language. Something like that is the other sense, because I also believe that we have a lot more senses than 5, that grade 5, I believe 33, it's also my number. Okay, I would like to give you some short insight into the Polish context of accessibility. And what I would like to start with is that in Poland we don't have a bigger, maybe national strategy for inclusive art for young audience and art in general. We don't have a long-term funding program for inclusive or accessible arts. And it is a big problem because I know a lot of artists, institutions, I also work in a public institution, and groups who are dealing with budget of 0. 0 for inclusion, 0 for accessibility. And I think that the most of the progress we can see in Poland happens thanks to the dedicated individuals. And I think it's very important to highlight this. System is very weak, but individuals, artists are very strong, full of passion and determination. And to be honest, the number of performances and creative projects dedicated specifically to the children with diverse needs is still quite small, but this field, though modest in scale, is vibrant and full of creative energy. It is shaped by artists, educators, and some cultural institutions who believe that theater, dance, and performance should belong to every child, regardless of ability, sensory profile, or communication style. So, first of all, accessibility, the necessary foundation. Accessibility in Poland developed mainly through 2019 act of ensuring accessibility for people with special needs. I don't like this term, special needs, because it's something like, oh, I would like to go to the moon. It's not about this. It's about the equal equity and equal rights. And this Accessibility Act requires public institutions, including public theaters, to remove physical, communicational, and digital barriers. It defines 3 main dimensions: architectural accessibility, communicational and informational accessibility. So, for example, I think that we are struggling with lack of plain language, with the lack of easy-to-read materials, something like that. And the third part of this act is digital accessibility. And what is for me very important and interesting is that this act also recognizes children, general children, as part of the group described as people with special needs. Just like I said, I don't think this is the best term. I'm from a group that prefers term like people with diverse needs, with individual needs, something like that. So the legal framework has brought visible progress, I think. As accessibility coordinator, I like to think that, oh, too small, too little, too slow. But when I change my perspectives and when I admire work of my colleagues, I believe that we did a lot to make our theaters as accessible as we could, without a lot of support, especially money support. Yeah, but accessibility, as important as it is, remains only the foundation, not the full picture. For me, accessibility opens the doors, but inclusion asks what happens once we are inside. Moreover, inclusion for me is the superpower of making everybody feel welcome and giving choice to decide if I would like to go inside or stay outside, and every choice is okay. For me, inclusion is not only separate access service, but this is creative strategy, a way of generate new artistic languages. Inclusion can reshape the way we are thinking about choreography, the way we are built scenography, or maybe we compose music or light. And in theater and dance for young audience, I think that inclusion is not about infrastructure, it is about designing the entire experience. I often describe inclusion as a practice of hospitality, so for me it was very interesting to hear about host. I think it's a very important person in theater. And for me it is the art of creating spaces where everyone, child or adult, can arrive as they are, feel safe, and freely explore the world through the play, imagination. And inclusion for me begins with the audience journey, how families hear about the show, how they can buy tickets, or if they can buy tickets, how they are greeted by this host or maybe by performers. With sensory cues guide them through the foyer, and how the rhythm of performance allows everyone to engage and rest. And each of these moments, for me, from the welcome and to the farewell, it's part of the performative dramaturgy which lead us to the inclusion in theater and dance. In Poland, I think that only a few theaters are exploring now this performative approach, this inclusion approach. I think that this accessible way is more popular and maybe is more accessible for theaters. But the interest is growing, especially among artists working with movement, body awareness, and early childhood access. And this is, I believe, is where the real potential lies. Inclusion as co-creation, not for children or teenagers with disabilities, but with them. And few examples from our field. I think that nowadays, quite popular concept is universal art, universal design in art. I think this is a great start. I think this is that universal design we know from architecture. It is full of tips for us how to make accessible event. But I think this is also risky one approach, because I agree with some statement from today that sometimes making art accessible for everyone, inclusive for everyone at the same time, sometimes can mean to exclude some part of these groups or making this art boring. Something like, okay, it's so, we don't want to engage in this. So I think that sometimes it's not about making every piece as accessible as possible by putting audio description, sign language, sensory aids, etc., but try to think how many stages we can create, and then they can be different. And I think for me it was, I learned this from deaf artists in Poland. Like they told me, Kasia, you don't have to put sign language in every show, but it'll be nice to see one show in sign language. And for me it was a crucial movement of my life. Okay, the other approach is, yes, that we have, it was premiere, we have work, yeah, maybe, okay, we have money and we would like to do something, so we put audio description, captions, etc., etc. So it's kind of adaptation. after premiere, sometimes it's too late, sometimes it's very difficult, sometimes, for example, I would like to cooperate with sign language interpreters, but there's a challenge to find a place during scenography. So it is very, very difficult, but the other point of view is to make accessibility or inclusion part of creative philosophy, and to remember about this from the first rehearsal, from the first idea. And a lot of Polish theater and artists are fans of this approach, and I think it's very, very moving, and I believe that will be great. There are great projects before us. Yeah, and what I would like to add, that a lot of places, for example, Theatre Pinocchio in Łódź, are making nice spaces where, for example, overstimulated people, neurodivergent people can relax. For example, they made special Pokój Spokój, the room for calm. It was co-designed with children, with neurodivergent children. I also would like to mention about project from Teatr Miniatura from Gdańsk. Sztuka się robi, the art happens, something like that, because this is a program where they invite groups of artists to prepare some kind of concept of play, of show, performance, something like that. And inclusion from the beginning is very important. And sometimes groups are mixed. For example, there are people with disabilities and with people so-called without disabilities. And it is a really interesting project made by Teatr Miniatura. Yes, and I would like also say a few words about my practice, because before my start, before my first performance inclusive, Great Britain and Ireland was a great field for me to find great questions, sometimes answers, a lot of inspirations, and it gave me some kind of power to go through multisensory theater. And I love working with multisensory, with immersive theater, with interactions. And one of my recent projects was the little belly button, Pempuszek. It was for children age 0 to 4. It was multisensory. We were playing a lot with sounds, with vibrant. It was very nice to relax. And what is important for me, I was working in team with deaf artists, a great choreographer, Patrycja Jarosińska, and the base of our performance was non-verbal. We are trying to find universal communication in our bodies. The other show, my first space odyssey, was about space, about first steps, about finding new ways of flying in the universe. But what was very interesting, sensory adaptation and this kind of approach was very interesting and moving for us from the beginning. And what happened? It turns out, after premiere, that we not only made performance for children, but also for overloaded adults. And now this performance is played for these two groups. We are traveling a lot with this performance because the other aim is to go to the places where people are struggling with, for example, lack of public transportation. It's a big problem in Poland, communication, transport, public transport. Okay, and when I think about opportunities, strengths, and maybe weaker points in Polish theater now, it's that the Polish landscape of inclusive performance for children is full of potential, but it's still emerging, rather fragile, and dependent on individuals. And strengths, artistic innovation, I love it in Poland, the artistic innovation and interdisciplinarity, grassroots creativity, a new generation of theater pedagogues, choreographers, and access coordinators, integrating inclusion and into creative process. I think that that's also the plus is increasing awareness in institution. I think that is going better and better in this field. And I also appreciate these legal frameworks because it helps us to ask about money and to fight for something we would like to do. And challenges, very limited number of inclusive performances for children, rather occasional than repertoire. Fragmented and short-term funding, this is a big problem. A lack of professional training in inclusive design, and some kind of perception gap, because it is still more common for a lot of people in Poland to think about inclusive art rather in terms of kind of social projects than art itself. So this gap is very, very difficult. Yeah, and our opportunity is that turning accessibility law into cultural innovation, building ecosystems between artists, scientists, families, educators. And what I hope for is that we can shape empathy through art and embodied learning. Yes, and to close this part, I would also like to say that for me, great potential is in cooperation, in collaboration with, for example, neuroscience, neuroaesthetics, and I think that is very interesting field for artists to not only close into our bubbles, so okay, we can do it in this way, but it's for me very important to, for example, work with neuropsychologicals. It's very interesting. Okay, so what I would like to say to the end, that I believe that we open the doorway in Poland, and I think that we have a lot of tools. And now I think it is time to fight for some kind of continuity for our ideas, because I believe that inclusion is the art of hosting and listening, and it is the kind of courage to ask not about how can we make this accessible, but how we can make this shared with the other people. And when the practice that in theater, dance, and performance for children, we don't just open our doors wider, but we can build a culture of empathy, imagination. For me, imagination is the other scenes we can share, and belonging. A culture where everyone, regardless of how they move, see, or feel, can dance in the same light. And because when we treat accessibility and inclusion as a creative practice, not only just a checklist, we have to do something. We not only change the way we make theater, but we change the way we can relate to each other. And this is why the exchange and collaboration are so vital. Meetings like our held within the Korczak Today's Festival are not only the great opportunity to present work, but they are space of learning. And they remind us that inclusive practice is a living dialogue. And now, so I would like to invite panelists and you for discussion. Thank you very much. Maybe sit here. Okay,
yeah, go after you.
Okay. And yeah, and probably I will need some kind of time director. It will be really helpful. Okay. So maybe to start, I would like to ask you how it all began in your own life. How did your journey into inclusive theater begin? Was it artistic decision, or did it emerge naturally through the encounters and interactions with some people?
Would like to take Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
I think, is this for us as individuals rather than the company?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was thinking about the company, where it's definitely about the interaction with
So okay,
the
you
audience.
can also say it. Yeah, it would be nice.
But I think for me, it was a sense of the playfulness in it, and it's how I like to be in the world. So in theatre, when I'd worked initially in children's theatre in a broad sense, working with different communities, working with young refugees, working with young people with mental health challenges. It's a very broad range of young people. And the thing that drew me closer and closer to sensory theatre, I think, was that sense of playfulness. And the theatre I enjoyed the most was the theatre where no one wanted to leave the stage because they were having too much fun. And yeah, I find it strange, like going to a show where it happens over there and I'm over here and the fun bit looks over there. So yeah, I think that's personally what draws me in.
Maybe you would like to add something, your point of view.
I mean, I touched on it earlier. I saw basically one sensory show, but that was the only sensory show that I had seen when I launched into just deciding to make my first sensory show. I think for me it was just the idea that as a creator to really think from a sensory perspective and to have the playfulness of a more interactive approach to making theatre. That was it.
It was when we started research for We Touch, which was a piece inspired, similarly actually to one of the things Natasha mentioned earlier, by the fact that no touch policies were I'm going to slow down. When no touch policies were being introduced into school environments, which were then being handed down to nurseries, how you can raise or educate or look after or care for a 0 to 3-year-old without touching them was evidenced immediately when, as the caregiver of the nursery was describing this to us, multiple 3-year-olds ran and wrapped themselves around their legs. And part of that research, we went into Great Ormond Street Hospital and spent, which is a specialist hospital for children in long-term care who've either been in hospital since birth and never left or repeatedly in and out of hospital. And as the piece was about touch, we knew that was such an important part of their development, and we spent 2 weeks on the ward, in a long-term stay ward, and witnessing the impact on those children and their families. All of the wards were all of the rooms were individuals on their own with their families, and then we came in, we took 2 dancers into those rooms and ran duets, and the impact of the work on the families and the children was just extraordinary. So the power of the body to connect and interact in ways that the intellectual, verbal world of theatre can't just profoundly hit the company. And that was a changing point for us.
And just as from the viewpoint of a performer, it was really part of our looking at how are we responding to the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child and ensuring that every child has access to high quality arts and cultural experiences, but also working very closely with Replay, and they were very much exploring that work at the time. So really, so it was very much a journey that we were taking with them. But I think my drive now is to try to make sure that, just like every other child within the festival, that those audiences have choice. So you don't just go there's your inclusive show for this festival, hope you enjoy it. You go, here is choice you as a family can make, but that's not cheap. That's just, it's high cost. So it's at the moment with the very challenging funding environment in Northern Ireland, it's me working out that balance of how I ensure that there is choice and that we all keep the doors open.
Before a second question, I would like to ask audience, maybe you have your questions or some kind of statements you would like to give us, because I think this is also place and time to include you. So, but I don't see, I don't hear. Yeah, of course. Later I will ask again. What I was thinking during watching your presentation, hearing your presentation, is eagerness to experiment with senses, with interactive theater, with this kind of immersive spaces. And I would like to ask you, because sometimes inclusive work means experimenting, taking risk, and testing what we don't know yet. And maybe I would like to ask you, what kind of so-called creative failures or so-called failures as lessons, what important for you in your artistic practice?
I mean, definitely for us, we tested the original set for Tiger has these metal buckets that drop down in space. Looking back, it seems crazy that we even tried it. But for example, it's actually physically dangerous occasionally to, play with those. But on the other hand, yeah, there was something about the environment to be allowed to test out those things. Because there are others that are surprising, like we still start the show with the strike of a match, whereas I think a lot of sensory theatre makers traditionally wouldn't have thought that that's the kind of thing, but it's really useful as the beginning of a show to go to darkness and then this single point of, light and energy, and you can sort of see the action of it. So there's things like that that came out of taking that approach, I think, that were useful. But yeah, there are.
Thank you.
There's so many things that get tried and changed. I don't think we've taken shows out in multiple times, and I don't think we've ever taken the same show out twice, exactly the same. Something has been redesigned. Space to Be, when we took it back to hospices, originally a piece it was too big to bring, but it was a resonating box initially, and it was designed for people to put their feet on. It was quite big, and a lot of people wanted to have it on their laps, and so it was a bit box-like, and aesthetically maybe didn't fit as nicely with the rest of the show. So when we redeveloped it, it became this, I think you saw a picture of it, a planet, and it's just much more ergonomically enjoyable, and had that, you could still put it on the floor, you could have it on your lap, you could hug it, it had more versatility. So yeah, things evolve, and I think it's being flexible to those. You try something and it takes you somewhere you might not have expected.
Yeah, the concept of the 2-hour durational performance, in our intellectual arrogance, we imagined that was going to suit neurodivergent audiences, this world. We learned very quickly that was not what was going to suit that. So I think not being arrogant is the thing. You have to keep reminding yourself, not having an ego, ready to fail every single day. Sticky Dance has done hundreds of shows. We still have those shows where we all regroup afterwards and go, what happened? We've just had 10 people run around a room for an hour. What did we do wrong? So you're constantly live, constantly reimagining. Yeah.
I think for the performers, they also had to get used to being rejected in a way that they're really not used to. They're normally treated by the children in the audience as being fantastic fun with loads of offerings. And actually for some of them, for their ego, that was actually really challenging. You know, like the female artist who played the mother, she said to me, like, because in the show, the mother character starts very, very close, and as the story happens is that you experience her reawakening of her senses, and I didn't want to lose that, but she kept on thinking, like, I'm going to be cold, I'm going to feel like I'm rejecting everybody, everybody's going to hate me. Maybe I should have that transformation at the beginning of the show, she said. I was like, yeah, but that's really not going to work. You still need those dramaturgical stages of the work. And likewise for Vince, who plays the tiger, he's used to being playful, everyone loves him, then suddenly he was in an environment where he just gets rejected, and it's really challenging for them. I think I always underestimate the emotional process. So like we did an adaptation simultaneously with a company from Turkey, and it was the first time they had ever done that work. And I think I had underestimated how emotional that first week is, that everyone's just basically sobbing. It's honestly really fun though, you should do it. No, but it's because they're moved, you know, like it's a really moving environment to be in. There's a sensitivity to it and an openness that you need to go to that therefore leaves you in a, you know, sort of tender place.
Can I share something I think is related? When the World Turns, that we're touring now, was originally conceived for young people who have very complex barriers, maybe described as profound and multiple learning disabilities. Young people who are usually very still, maybe wheelchair users, and would usually be brought into the space, have a still experience unless something is brought to them. That was the starting point of that show, and so thematically there's a lot of stillness in it. And then of course we tour it and yes, our you know, primary conversations with venues and touring partners, whether that's a school or a theatre or a festival, is about trying to reach people who that show is really, really designed for. And that didn't always happen in reality. So we knew going to one festival that there was going to be an audience of autistic young people who were particularly mobile, so kind of the opposite of what we'd anticipated. And yeah, that thing of the performers having to adapt. And we actually brought in an amazing artist, Max Alexander, from Scotland, who's a play specialist, who worked with us and worked with the performers about ways they could adapt. And this one show, I didn't think the show was going to happen at all. You had young people, one child came in, again, six young people in the audience. One child made it into the space at the beginning with ear defenders on and very, you know, very insular in his interactions. One young person made it to the doorway and sat down. And then another young person was in the corridor and occasionally looking in. And the performers were brilliant. I could see they were all looking at each other, communicating non-verbally, and with the stage managers. And I thought it was just going to be a very open play space, which would have been fine. But they did make it into the show and just completely adapted the length of each scene and how they interacted. And at the end, you had 4 young people in the space, one of whom was in my arms, another was climbing over a performer's back, and it was different. Each show is different, but the flexibility and the lack of ego for the performers, I think, is really important.
I think that lack of ego is crucial thing for making our theaters more accessible or inclusive, because, for example, it's unfortunately still, unfortunately we have a lot of problems in Poland, for example, with adding sign language interpretation, because some people on the stage are like, oh no, the stage is for me, only for me. So it's very, very, very difficult. But also this ego thing is in the society of accessibility. For example, few weeks ago, I've started a new project. It will be dance performance for sighted children and children with visual impaired children. And we will have integrated audio description, and I hear a lot, but it is not audio description. Audio description is via headphones. It needs to be not improvised, but it has to be, just on the point. And I would like to ask you, what is in UK and Ireland not possible, and you are doing it anyway?
I mean, I just saw a show this week. It was interesting. It's by Dan Dorr. I don't know if you know him. He's a performer with cerebral palsy. But there's even simple things. I think sometimes it's about doing it, because there's the argument that people might not need it. So, for example, one of the audience members, her brother has cerebral palsy, and she asked for a changing toilet. You can hire a mobile changing toilet because most public spaces don't have the kind of toilet facilities that her brother would need. So she put in a request, and they did actually provide it. And I remember when I read the brochure, I was like, wow, it's amazing they've got a changing toilet. And then I found out that this one person had asked for it. The brother came, And I think it's just that thing, isn't it, of if it's not there, then those audiences aren't there, and therefore you don't realize the need necessarily. Because unless you have, someone that personally, potentially, then I think those things are just so important. So for example, audio description, there's often the argument that people might not use it, do you know what I mean? But it's those blind or visually impaired people are not going to be looking in theatre brochures. Those children with very, neurodivergent children have stopped looking in theatre brochures for family work because they weren't serving them. If we need relaxed theatre, it means that most theatre is basically uptight, you know what I mean? So actually we need to readjust that and make it the norm, and only by doing that does it become that sort of...
For us, it was the quiet spots, the moments of rest, the moments of pause in the sticky dance. I remember watching a number of promoters' faces, programmers, when they came to that point in the show. It was like, well, there's nothing happening. And no, we're processing. The audience is processing. There's a lot going on. It's just happening in their heads, and we're letting them process. We're giving them time. And you'd see the audience there'd be little movements, there'd be little cuddles, there'd be just... And I, as the producer, was very nervous about it and quite resistant, and kept with it. And it's grown and it's matured, and now we're beginning to see it in other performances. So I think it's a case of there are things you can't do. Just if you have an idea, do it. If you see a need that's being addressed, go for it, test it. You have to break the rules. We've only been doing this for 50 years, not 2,000 years. So we need to just keep reinventing things.
And I think as well, it's don't try to do everything at once, because then it's just a noise. I saw one show that was captions and integrated audio description and sign language, and it was just audio overload. We have a unique situation in Northern Ireland that there is British Sign Language and there is also Irish Sign Language. So, you've just got to choose one, and go with it and not get politicized by it. If you ever see a news report coming from Northern Ireland, which occasionally we will make the European news, if you notice behind our two, our Deputy and First Minister, there will be two signers, and that's because it's the two line. And it's not, the thing obviously with sign language, it's not a direct translation of the language. They're two separate languages. It doesn't just translate English and translate Irish. They are two separate, different languages. So at the moment, we're trying to get both British Sign Language and Irish Sign Language recognised by the devolved government as languages that need to be protected and promoted. Yeah.
What do you imagine the future of inclusive performances might look like, especially with sensory design, maybe with new digital tools, or maybe AI?
One thing I think is important for us, and we're very much on a journey, is the young collaborators we're working with in making the work. I was reflecting on that when you said, sort of, what are you doing that is difficult, but you're doing it anyway. And yeah, like some of these young people, one young person needed 3 support workers, which we're very lucky was supported by Access to Work in the UK. So they had, there was someone supporting the administrative side of things. There was somebody, it's a role we have a lot in the UK, a creative enabler, somebody who's working as a creative artist, ensuring that their creative voice is fully recognised and heard at all times. And also this person uses eye gaze to communicate. So in terms of, technological improvements, this was an individual specialising in eye gaze, being, so they're a wheelchair user and they have a tablet mounted up with different words and different symbols, and it tracks the movement of their eye. And the support worker was able to keep adding new vocabulary, new phrases to speed up her communication in the process. I think there's a lot of interesting advances with AI, but there's also the risk at the moment in the UK, particularly with the Access to Work funding, that is at risk in its own right, but of people being pushed to have automated solutions, not people, and that is not the same. Maybe for some people, this will bring, I think it will bring increased access for certain people, but it will also risk, not having the person there with the specialised knowledge or the specialised human support that they need to fully participate. But I hope there's a future where we recognise that and there's room for both, and that therefore, we can keep seeing, more young people who might otherwise be thought of as, someone who can't lead something, taking the lead.
I think when we look to the future as well, I would like to ask, what happens when these children and young people turn 18? When I look at the venues and theatres around me in Northern Ireland, where's the inclusive performances for disabled adults there? If it's there, I'm just not aware of it, and so forgive me if you make that type of work. But I see children and young people being serviced with that provision. I am not seeing adults so much being...
I'll do a shout out for Frozen Light in
was
the
about to do
UK, who do specialise in that work for
Certainly
adults
not in Northern Ireland.
England.
We're not seeing any of it.
Yeah,
at
they
the
may not be
moment,
doing Northern Ireland yet. We'll send them over.
Yeah, send them over.
I'd like to see, I talked earlier about 24% of the population. I'd like to see 24% of every single resource applied to making work accessible. Every single resource, human power, building power, money, political power, to give us that parity. And going back to buildings as well, we don't have buildings that are fully inclusively accessible, so that your team can be disabled as well. This is another area that some companies are making steps forward on, but in terms of technical teams, we had the amazing gift of performing in South Korea in the summer in a building that was fully accessible across all areas of it, for the technical team, the performers, the administration, the audience. That's extraordinary. That would be really a gift.
often the biggest challenge is not only creating the inclusive performance, for example, but to convince the others that this is the art, not only this social project I mentioned before. And I would like to ask you, what kind of arguments or strategies have you found the most effective during this process of advocating for inclusive art? Because in Poland we are looking for these strategies.
Certainly when we're at festivals, if there's like a delegation, then we get asked if they can come and watch. And there was, like, at first I think we tried to really restrict the number, but now I've really gone the other way. I'm like, yeah, let them all in, because they're like really worried that it will disrupt the performance. But I feel like as long as you find a way to control that, there's something about witnessing it for yourself that will make you be passionate about it in the future.
I'm so heartened to hear this, because that was going to be a question that I was going to ask you later this evening. Can we talk?
I mean, there's nothing more effective than actually seeing the work. Simple as that, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think, being programmed in festivals is fantastic. I think, being programmed alongside, it is art. And that, I can't remember who first, was it Andrew or you that first put the rights of the child? That's, everybody has the right to theatre. So, and to good quality theatre,
Yes, I think when advocating particularly towards funders and stakeholders that can help you make it happen, and Joy, I know Andrew said earlier that I don't know if you've come across the Lundy model of child participation. It's quite interesting. It's been devised by a professor that actually I knew about the Lundy model before I knew that Professor Laura Lundy was actually an academic sitting in Belfast. She's a professor at Queen's University Belfast, and she has, using the EU Conventions of the Rights of the Child, has created this model for child participation about giving them space, voice, audience, and influence. And she did a keynote for us at the festival a few years ago, and she said, when asked by funders, can you demonstrate the benefits to children and young people of receiving artistic intervention? She just went, no, I don't have to. It's their right. And I think that's what we need to say to funders. This is their human right, and what we are doing is helping you fulfill your obligations to those children.
I think we also have to look outside of our bubbles. The work for young audiences sector is very small. The inclusive work within that is a minority within a minority already. I'm very fortunate I freelance outside of my work with secondhand dance, making work for adult audiences as well. So I feel sometimes I'm in a room and a level of conversation that my peers aren't often invited to. And I think I then have a responsibility to keep making the case amongst those other sectors where there's bigger budgets, where value is very different, and to keep raising the voice of the work for young audiences within that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, yeah, it is perfect time. But I think that probably you will need microphone, yes? Because, yeah. Okay, so one will be traveling.
I'll do microphone dolly.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Bartosz Kurowski, and I would like to add a little bit different perspective regarding the landscape of accessibility in Polish theater, the new Katarzyna, and I would like to add it also as a representative of institution and also as a stage director. Because I feel that in Poland, this awareness regarding accessibility is increasing. And it is optimistic perspective, because for example, regarding the place for interpreter in theater, there was a time when I coordinated accessibility process in the Pinocchio Theatre in Łódź, and none of the directors, none of actors had something against the interpreter in the theater. Opposite, they include very often interpreter. They made some kind of improvisations to include interpreter in the process of performance. So it was very, very nice from their perspective. And also I'm kind of proud that, for example, in the Pinocchio Theatre in Łódź, but I also believe that in other institutions, when there are training courses regarding accessibility organized, a huge amount of people from institutions want voluntarily participate in these training courses from different fields, like actors, like directors, head directors, account managers, and so on, and also cleaning ladies, because we are aware that accessibility begins from the very beginning, from the information regarding the performance, from the entrance of the theater. So I feel that a lot of people in institutions are really aware of it. And I feel also that also artists are aware, because we know more and more projects which include audio description and Polish Sign Language interpretation in the process of creation. And also I spoke with different directors, different creators, and they told me that this is also an opportunity to develop our languages of thinking about theater, our languages of theater. So this is also very optimistic for me. And last but not least, thank you also that, first of all, thank you for all your presentations, because it was very inspiring for me. And thank you that you also emphasize the need of representation of different people for whom we do the accessible work, for who we do the accessible performances. And I feel in Poland also there is a need to include them in a process as actors, as writers, as directors, dancers, and so on. So I think my point of view is a bit more optimistic than yours, but also thanks for your opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because I feel that everything is changing for better. Maybe I'm working a lot with people, for example, from small towns, something like that, and I know their perspectives, and I would like today to share their perspectives, because I am in a privileged situation. I'm making inclusive art, so my point of view is everything is great, but I know a lot of people who are struggling with this zero budget, with people in the institution telling them we don't have this kind of audience. Why? Let's do something different. So I think that these 2 points of view are very, very important. And about representation, I think that it's very optimistic that a lot of groups in Poland and theaters are really engaging. Self-advocates, for example, I know, I'm working with deaf choreographers, I know deaf dramaturgists, and there's a lot of blind, partly sighted actors, and I think that this kind of representation is stronger and stronger. And I'm proud of this too. Okay, thank you for your voice. And maybe,
I also just want to quickly say we also welcome questions in Polish. We do have simultaneous translation.
Okay. It doesn't matter, I think, because I would like to ask you all for one question, because My name is Emma. I'm from the student resignation here, and I was thinking about some cooperations between you and also, as you said, that you have also the festival in March. I thought that maybe for future generation of us, it could be really helpful to have opportunity to cooperate with you. Like, do you have any, I don't know, any opportunities to go there, to do these things, maybe some workshops with your performers, maybe some, I don't know, some internship? If it could be possible for us, it will be really good. So that's my question. And also, I'm so thankful because it was really inspired for me, and I also had some really nice memories through these presentations because my brother was living in Ireland, and his wife was working in a Montessori group, and I was there when I was a child. So I was like, oh, really magical. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, maybe the impetus that we've been able to get moving today will maybe allow maybe Dorothy and us to have maybe to see if we can look for some artist exchange opportunities that we can maybe hopefully host maybe some visits over naturally to Belfast, to my festival would be the idea. But because I'm just being very aware that I have two of those inclusive works we were speaking with today actually happening in March there. So we might have a chat and see whether there might be some powers that be that might have some little coins down the back of the sofa that might be able to find them and dig that out.
Yeah, we don't have any formal placements, but we're always open for people to come and hang out with us.
Question here?
Yeah, same.
Ditto. Sadly, our budgets don't allow us to run the training programs as well quite yet, but very open to conversations and opportunities. So
Yeah, we.
If I search you at Instagram, for example, I
Yeah.
will type to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are you going
Yeah.
to do this
Right
year?
to us.
I just want to say everybody's cards are actually sitting on the windowsill. So just grab them and
Apart
feel
from
free.
mine, because I'm
to.
rubbish at-
So
and I
just
will
go-
just say that I accidentally forgot the second-hand dance cards, so Tandem Works is me. Okay.
Thank you, and thank you, Emma, for your question. Oh, where are you? Here. Okay. Our residency is reaction for a gap in artistic education, where theater for young audience is absent. And I think that this question also resonates with another gap in artistic education, Polish, that we don't learn about, inclusive theater. So my question is, how does it look like in UK in artistic education?
There's Rose Bruford is, I think, a really pioneering university college, Rose Bruford College, in Kent and in England, and they do training in sensory theatre. They also have some other really interesting modules around, kind of change in theatre. I can't remember the title of all of their courses.
But I've had zero education in anything, and I don't think that should stop you if it's something that interests you in terms of, I don't think you need to have a formal education in those areas. There's other ways of,
And none of the dance conservatoires in England have any training in work for young audiences currently. It's something I've been trying to campaign.
Although Canduco Dance Company are involved at Laban
Yeah.
to do training on inclusive practice in terms of dance.
Yeah, but specifically for young audiences, there's not even modules. I mean, it's absolutely shocking. Yeah, so trying to shift that as well.
I think it's really about knowing your audience. So if you have an experience of that audience, then that's the way in.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you don't have training, I found our conversation earlier when you're talking about using a match in a show, and that isn't usually done. I think that can be really advantageous, that sometimes you just take
If you
a
don't
leap
know
in
the rules,
dark.
it's easier to break them
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah. I think we just had a question here.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a technical question because I'm a psychology student and I got interested in neuropsychology some time ago. So I was wondering, because it's really interesting for me how human brain develops at a young age, and not only neurodivergent people, just people in general. So I was curious because I saw the parts of your plays and I think they look great and I think I would love them as a child. If you have some psychologist, for example, working with you at the first stage of preparing a play, so is there somebody that gives you some tips on what might be suitable for this kind of audience, or is it something that you, as people of theater, make up by yourself and it just works like this? I'm really curious because I loved it.
I mean, we do a lot of reading, particularly around child development milestones. We try to bring expertise in as much as we possibly can. It's quite hard to find the exact specialists. But I mean, as I said, we bring in lots of advisors all the way through our process, just acknowledging we don't have the experience where, I mean, I'm a neurotypical, non-disabled 50-something, and we're making work for 3-year-olds and 7-year-olds that have other needs. So yeah, just acknowledging what you don't know and trying to find it.
Yeah, I think we're similar in as much as I think, it's trying to find those voices, whether they're in the artistic team, whether they're, members of our company at large. But yeah, we welcome collaboration with researchers. We've had a researcher in residence. Dr. Jill Goodwin was fantastic. That led to a report called Being With in sensory theatre, and that has really influenced a lot of our work. And yeah, we're about to go on a big journey collaborating with London School of Economics, weirdly, and Roehampton University on a kind of lots of research and lots of other arts organisations around researching in sensory and inclusive practice, which I think will really enrich it. But yeah, it tends to be a case of, inviting people in, doing lots of development processes and inviting people in. And whether it's working with parents or teachers, nursery, school staff, that those people that spend time with, whoever we're making the work for, and with, is, and obviously the young people themselves, that's so much part of it.
Yeah, making Playful Tiger, we did bring in a couple of people, but one was the play specialist that you were talking about, and he did observation and wrote us some reports about, we were looking at the success of allowing the children agency in the work, so he was observing that for us. And the other person that Ellie actually brought in was really interesting. He actually is a Thai masser and he had some experience of working with neurodivergent children and children with different sensory needs, and he taught us some techniques where you can kind of effectively use your physical body against their physical body and find ways to move. And that was actually a really amazing day for us, because I think it gave us a massive shift in confidence in terms of, obviously as dance artists, working with the body and touch is something that's very familiar to us and easier than talking. But this was like a next level. So that whole day we just brought the children in and we brought them down to the ground, and we did there was just one child per adult in the space, and we just practiced these techniques. And it was a really interesting day because I think it made us, it was the first sensory show we'd ever made, and I think it made us really reassess the energy or the type of input that we needed. That really did not answer your question, but it was...
quick
That's
shout
who we did
out.
bring in the room, yeah.
I've mentioned his name, but yeah, Max Alexander, who's the play specialist, has a book now called Autistic Shapes of Play that's well worth a look.
Actually, I completely forgot. We're about to start a residency in a Freuble nursery in the south of London, for an extended period of time, and their philosophy is very like Montessori, but it's all about child-led experience. The only structured time in the day is lunchtime. Everything else is led by the child, which completely aligns with our way of making work. So we're kind of interested to see what's going to come out of that.
I think some of the other things that it's not, again, not like researchers per se, but working with people with a very different perspective, different backgrounds has been really interesting. Recently, 2 people we've collaborated with. One is Aaron McPeak, who's an artist, was a theatre lighting designer, is now visually impaired and works using bell metal, so metal that you make bells out of, to really play with the resonance in his sculptures. He's working as an artist researcher alongside a program, so there's going to be something coming out in the spring that he's following the process, working with us. And another really interesting collaboration on our current project that's happening in Sweden, in Sideways, is we wanted to explore taste and not feeling particularly confident about exploring that sense. A lot of the audience that we work with may not eat in a way that we might be familiar with, so they may be tube-fed. It may be a very medicalized process, but we managed to work with these chefs in London who did it for free because they liked the idea, and there is a menu as part of it which doesn't involve eating. It's things like lip balm and smells, and it's a 3-course meal designed by these chefs. So I just sharing that because I just think it's interesting when you kind of cross practice beyond the theatre bubble. It gets really interesting.
This is the end. Or just a break of our conversation. Thank you very much. Many thanks to our panelists, curator. Thank you, Zoe, Natasha, Eibhlín, Claire, and Kasia. And many thanks to our audience for 6 hours together. And our translators. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bartosz. Yes. Dzięki wielkie za to spotkanie. Dziękuję naszym rozmówczyniom, kuratorce, dziękuję Państwu, dziękujemy tłumaczom i kończymy dzisiejszą konferencję FOKUS Wielka Brytania, ale nie kończymy festiwalowego dnia, bowiem przed nami jeszcze Karolcia z WTL-u w Teatrze Polskim. Tak, Karolcia z Wrocławskiego Teatru Lalek. Dziękuję i dziękuję też bardzo wsparciu technicznemu. Dzięki wielkie, panowie. I do zobaczenia. Do zobaczenia. Dzięki. Thank you very much.